The leather of the steering wheel was cold under my palms. I held it there until my hands stopped shaking. Not because I felt calm, because I needed them to look like I did. The sun was high, 3:45 p.m., and the air carried the scent of fresh-cut roses from the wedding arch. I glanced at the GPS, 2 miles to the venue. The gravel crunched under my tires. Inside the car, the coffee steamed, rich and nutty. I remembered 1998, working late with my mentor Harold at the shipping dock. He had taught me to notice details others missed. The smell of engine oil and salt water filled the warehouse. Harold laughed, light and raspy. I could still hear it. The venue looked opulent, grand chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Marble floors reflected sunlight, and soft music hummed from hidden speakers. The temperature inside was warm, a contrast to the crisp wind outside. The scent of jasmine from centerpieces hit my nose. I analyzed Richard Sterling's stance near the entrance. He was smirking, wearing a navy suit that cost more than my car. His eyes scanned the crowd, calculating, arrogant. Emily whispered, "Dad, stay calm. Just watch." I did. My hands rested lightly on the leather briefcase. I could feel its weight, the hidden contents inside. The guests were milling about, 50 of them clustered near the bar. I counted 4 security staff strategically placed. I could sense the tension. My mind mapped their reactions, every sneer, every raised eyebrow. I had to time everything perfectly. This wedding was a stage. The clinking of glasses punctuated the chatter. I noted the shimmer of my father Harold's cufflinks, silver, catching the afternoon sun. They seemed out of place in the eyes of Richard and Victoria. I recalled 2010, a boardroom meeting with my former CEO, Ms. Anderson. She had slid a contract across the table with the faintest smirk. The smell of ink and leather filled the room. I had learned to read micro-reactions then. That training now helped me. The sounds of laughter and light conversation masked the subtle barbs Richard delivered toward Harold. "He still uses that old watch?" "Huh." Richard's words echoed, casual but cutting. I watched as Harold adjusted it, calm. I felt the muscles in my jaw relax slightly. I knew the briefcase contained everything needed for the reveal. The clock ticked, 3:48 p.m. I ran scenarios silently. Each guest's likely reaction, each possible interruption. I calculated precise timing. I observed the florist arranging petals, the scent of roses sharp and sweet. Emily leaned closer. "Dad, look at the champagne glasses. 5 empty already." I noted the specific sequence. Patterns emerged. The pianist played a familiar tune. Memory flashed. 2005, negotiating a deal with Mr. Whitman at the harbor. The cold air, the salt tang, the creak of wood. He had tested my patience then, too. I could trace the timing, the pressure points. Now, they were mirrored here. I felt a thrill. 3 minutes to the toast. I monitored Richard's interactions. He moved toward the microphone. His laughter was audible across the hall. Victoria clinked her glass. "Everyone, attention," she called. "Let's toast to the charming poor old man." Murmurs rose. The guests smiled politely. I noted every expression. I sensed the heat, the sunlight, the faint breeze from open windows. I kept my face neutral, analyzing, strategizing. My mind ticked through every financial lever ready to spring. My eyes scanned the photographers, 2 on the left balcony, 1 near the cake. My father Harold whispered softly, "Trust your instincts, James." I inhaled, steady, counting 1, 2, 3. The champagne fizzed in glasses, 32 in total. Richard raised his glass, eyes glinting. To the man we never expected to amount to anything. My pulse quickened. I pressed a button on my watch, synchronized alert to Robert Clark. Everything was in place. The briefcase rested against my thigh. I visualized the reactions. Every smirk, every whispered comment, every glimmer of envy. The final piece was ready. And then, just as Richard opened his mouth to continue, a voice cut sharply across the hall. "Dad, your account balance just cleared, all $12 billion. I stepped out of the car. The driveway was hot, 87 degrees, asphalt radiating heat. The scent of fresh-cut grass mingled with the faint aroma of catering food. Music from the reception hall spilled into the parking lot. I tightened my grip on the briefcase. Emily brushed past me, whispering, "Dad, are you ready for them?" I nodded. I remembered 2007, working late with my colleague Margaret at the law firm downtown. The smell of printer ink and coffee was sharp. She had laughed about missing a court deadline. I learned then how small details could betray larger truths. The reception hall doors opened, sunlight spilling onto polished oak floors. I could hear the distant clinking of champagne glasses and quiet murmurs of the guests. The temperature inside felt slightly cooler than outside. A floral scent of lilies and roses hung in the air. Richard Sterling was near the gift table, smoothing his tie, smirking as Victoria whispered something in his ear. I observed their interactions. Every gesture, every glance was overconfident. "He looks confused," Victoria said. "He probably does not realize what is coming." I counted 60 guests seated in the main hall, 3 photographers capturing the scene, and 4 servers maneuvering quietly between tables. My mind raced, mapping every angle, every potential interruption. Emily passed me a small tablet, screen glowing. The latest asset confirmation report. "Dad, check this," she said softly. I glanced down. The numbers aligned perfectly. $3,200,000,000 and $12,000 were positioned for transfer. I kept my face neutral, analyzing the room. I noticed the heat from the overhead lights bouncing off the chandeliers, casting golden reflections. I remembered 2013, lunch with my friend Alan at the marina, the smell of diesel fuel and the tang of salt water. He had shown me how to read contracts for hidden clauses. That skill now guided my assessment. Richard raised a glass, still unaware of the pending revelation. "To the old man who thought he could impress us," he announced. I noted the guests' reactions, some polite, some stifled chuckles. I adjusted my position near the refreshment table, listening to the soft hum of conversation and the shuffle of chairs across the floor. The photographer focused on Richard, timing his shot. I observed 3 champagne flutes placed neatly on a tray, and the servers moving in sync. My mind calculated sequences, potential delays, the exact moment to trigger the confirmation. The music shifted to a piano solo, notes echoing, the sound crisp and clear. I considered every exit point, every vantage, every camera. The lighting threw long shadows, and I inhaled the faint aroma of roasted almonds from hors d'oeuvres. My hands rested lightly on the leather briefcase. Each breath measured, deliberate. The tablet beeped again, notification flashing in red, final confirmation executed. My pulse quickened slightly. I reviewed the financial layout one last time. 3 figures stood out. $3,212,000,000 in staged accounts, 2 minutes to the next scheduled toast, and 52 seconds until the photographer's shutter would capture Richard's expression. I realized the timing aligned perfectly. Emily leaned close, whispering, "Dad, the alert just came through. It's all live." I scanned the crowd, Richard gesturing animatedly to Victoria. The contrast of his arrogance against the poised calm of Harold made my chest tighten. I recalled 2011, meeting with my mentor Stephen in the conference room, the faint smell of polished wood and inked folders filling the air. He had emphasized precision under observation. I absorbed that lesson now. My internal analysis concluded the in-laws had no idea their control was ending. I checked the tablet again, confirming all data points, accounts, transfers, timing mechanisms. My mental map of the wedding hall was complete. Every potential witness noted, every pathway calculated. I could feel the sunlight on my hands, warm and steady. I reflected. Each guest, each detail, each number was part of the setup. The chandelier light flickered as a breeze passed through open windows. Music, murmurs, footsteps, all elements accounted for. Then the tablet buzzed one final time, displaying a message from Robert Clark. "Dad, the transfer executed exactly as planned. $3,212,012,000 cleared to Harold Mitchell's accounts." The wedding livestream caught everything. I stepped into the garden terrace. The late afternoon sun warmed the marble floor. The scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass mingled. I could hear distant laughter and the soft chime of glasses. Emily trailed behind, adjusting the flow of her dress. "Dad, look at the setup. Every detail is perfect," she whispered. I glanced at the fountain, water splashing rhythmically. I remembered 2009, my old friend Marcus at the shipping yard. The smell of salt water and diesel engines filled the dock. He had pointed out subtle inconsistencies in cargo manifests. That memory sharpened my attention. The tables were arranged in neat rows. White linens gleamed under the sun. I counted 64 chairs set for guests, 3 silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, and 6 photographers stationed strategically. My pulse quickened slightly as I assessed the crowd. Richard Sterling was near the center, raising a toast, unaware of the shift occurring. Victoria leaned in, smiling. Everyone, attention. Let's hear it for Harold, the charming old man. I kept my expression neutral, analyzing the room. The light shifted, golden and warm, reflecting off champagne flutes. I noted 3 large floral arrangements, each casting a distinct fragrance of roses and lilies. I reflected silently, calculating timing, mapping reactions, and rehearsing the next steps. The tablet in my hand confirmed $3,200,012,000 had transferred successfully. I inhaled sharply, steadying myself. My eyes scanned the guests. Each whisper, each polite smile, each glance measured. My father Harold adjusted his cufflinks, silver glinting in sunlight. He seemed unaware of the brewing revelation. I recalled 2012, a meeting with my former colleague Jane in Boston. The smell of parchment and ink had filled the small office. She had taught me to read patterns others overlooked. That skill now guided my movements. I shifted closer to the bar, observing servers moving gracefully with trays of wine. The music of a string quartet filled the air. The breeze carried a hint of jasmine from nearby hedges. I analyzed each in-law's expression. Arrogance was visible. Confidence radiated from Richard and Victoria. I noted the distance between the photographers and the main table, 20 feet, unobstructed. I adjusted my briefcase subtly, ensuring it rested securely on my hip. My mind replayed potential scenarios, contingencies, and interruptions. Each guest's possible reaction calculated. Every movement aligned with the plan. Emily whispered again, "Dad, the live stream is running. Everyone can see everything now." I nodded. My pulse remained steady. The final piece of evidence would be revealed precisely. The fountain gurgled, a soothing rhythm against the hum of conversation. I remembered 2015, my mentor Robert at the shipping company, the scent of polished wood and metal. He had emphasized patience and observation under pressure. That lesson anchored my strategy. I stepped closer to the main hall doors, feeling the cool marble under my shoes. 3 photographers focused on the in-laws. I noted every angle. Timing was everything. Richard raised his glass again. To Harold, the man who never made a fortune, he said smugly. I could see the subtle shifts in guests' posture, unease beginning. The tablet vibrated in my hand. I glanced down. Confirmation signals were green. The final sequence initiated. Every figure, every timing, every movement coordinated. I inhaled the floral scent again, grounding myself. Emily whispered softly, "Dad, it's set. You just need to act." I stepped forward, pressing the small button on the briefcase. Mechanism engaged silently. A display on the wedding livestream flashed briefly. Guests glanced up, confusion spreading. Cameras focused, capturing reactions. The champagne glinted. The fountains danced. The lighting highlighted each startled expression. And then, the notification popped on my smartwatch. Forbes just published the Billionaire list update. Harold Mitchell, age 78. Net worth confirmed $3,212,012,000. I stepped onto the terrace balcony, the breeze cool against my skin. The aroma of grilled salmon and rosemary drifted from the catering station below. Sunlight reflected sharply off the glass railings. I remembered 2016, having lunch with my colleague Sandra at the Boston office. The smell of printer ink and fresh pastries filled the room. She had laughed while reviewing contract discrepancies. That memory guided my attention to subtle cues. I scanned the terrace. Tables for 45 guests were neatly aligned. 3 silver trays of appetizers sat untouched. 2 musicians tuned their violins. Richard Sterling spoke to a waiter, adjusting his cufflinks, unaware of the shift. Victoria whispered, "He has no idea yet. Just wait." I analyzed their posture, micro-expressions, and timing. Every gesture indicated arrogance. I noted 5 cameras recording from different angles. The marble floor beneath my shoes was cool and slightly damp from morning cleaning. The breeze carried a faint jasmine scent. I checked the tablet in my hand. All transfers confirmed. $3,212,012,000 active. I observed the champagne glasses, 28 filled precisely, bubbles rising steadily. The light cast shadows across the terrace. I calculated when the next toast would occur. Each guest's reaction had been mentally mapped. I noticed the subtle twitch in Richard's smile. Harold adjusted his tie, silver cufflinks reflecting sunlight. I recalled 2014, walking with my friend Peter through the shipping yard. The smell of salt water and diesel was strong. Peter had emphasized noticing every detail. I applied that memory to the terrace now. I shifted position near the buffet, monitoring in-laws. Richard raised his glass, and Victoria smiled, glancing at him. Everyone, attention. Let's toast to Harold, the man we never expected, Victoria announced. Guests murmured softly, polite yet uneasy. I kept calm, letting tension build. I noted 3 light fixtures reflecting off polished wood tables. Emily leaned close, whispering, "Dad, the live stream shows everything. They are all watching." My internal analysis calculated probabilities, sequences, and timing. I adjusted the briefcase on my hip. Every number, every movement, every potential interruption accounted for. I inhaled deeply, the aroma of roasted almonds grounding me. The music from the string quartet shifted slightly, notes carrying clearly in the breeze. I reflected, timing, sequence, reactions. The sun dipped to 4:05 p.m., shadows stretching across the terrace. 3 photographers focused on Richard, frames ready. I envisioned the exact moment to trigger the revelation. The tablet buzzed once more. I glanced down, final confirmation received, assets live. The wedding livestream flickered. I could sense the crowd noticing. I remembered 2011, consulting with mentor Linda at the firm. The smell of parchment and ink filled the small office. She had drilled attention to timing and patience. That training reinforced my next moves. I observed the champagne being poured, 26 flutes in order. The fountains nearby gurgled softly. I calculated the exact moment to press the button on the briefcase. My eyes scanned for interference. Everything aligned precisely. Guests looked toward Richard, anticipation in their eyes. I adjusted my grip. Emily whispered, "Dad, are you ready?" I nodded once, deliberate. And then I pressed the mechanism. The briefcase clicked open, and a projection flashed across the terrace. Harold Mitchell, age 78. Net worth $3,212,012,000 confirmed by Forbes. I walked down the grand stairwell toward the pavilion. The marble steps were smooth and cold under my shoes. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting colored patches across the walls. The scent of roasted chicken and fresh herbs floated from the buffet. I recalled 2013, sharing a late lunch with my former colleague Diane at the corporate office. The smell of black coffee and printer ink filled the air. She had taught me to notice subtle changes in behavior during negotiations. That lesson guided my observations now. The pavilion floor gleamed, polished wood reflecting sunlight. Soft music played from speakers hidden in corners. The temperature was comfortably warm, but a breeze drifted from the open side doors. I surveyed the tables. 46 guests seated, 4 photographers capturing angles, and 6 staff moving quietly between tables. Richard Sterling whispered something to Victoria while adjusting his cufflinks. "He thinks he knows everything," she said, eyes gleaming. I analyzed every expression, every gesture. The briefcase rested on my hip, its contents ready. I ran the scenario in my mind. Timing, reactions, exposure. Each movement by Richard and Victoria indicated overconfidence. I counted 27 champagne flutes, all filled, bubbles rising steadily. I noted the shimmer of sunlight across the water fountain nearby. My pulse was steady, deliberate. I recalled 2012, a conversation with mentor Paul at the shipping office. The smell of engine oil and salt water hung in the air. He had emphasized patience and timing during critical decisions. That memory sharpened my focus. The pavilion windows opened slightly, carrying scents of jasmine and roses. I observed the distance between Richard and the photographers, 18 feet. Every micro-expression was analyzed. I noted 3 large floral arrangements, their fragrance distinct. I whispered to Emily, "Dad, everything is ready. You just need to act." She nodded slightly, holding her dress. I watched the live stream screen, the feed showing each guest in real time. The tablet confirmed all transfers were completed, $3,212,012,000 confirmed live. I considered the reactions, Richard's smugness, Victoria's whispered instructions, Harold's calm demeanor. The music shifted to a violin solo, soft and clear. I mentally mapped each potential disruption. The servers carried trays of hors d'oeuvres, 8 pieces each, moving precisely. I adjusted my grip on the briefcase. My mind raced with calculations, sequences, probabilities. Shadows shifted across the polished floor. The lighting highlighted Richard's startled expression when Harold raised a hand subtly. I felt the sunlight warming my wrist, steadying my pulse. I observed the guests' eyes widening slightly, murmurs rising. I could anticipate each reaction. The fountains splashed rhythmically. I recalled 2010, consulting with colleague Nina at the dock. The smell of diesel and salt water filled the small office. She had shown me how to track patterns in complex scenarios. That memory reinforced my planning now. I shifted closer to the main table, observing, calculating, waiting. Richard raised his glass to Harold, speaking loudly. To the man who never seemed to amount to anything. The guest smiled politely. I adjusted the briefcase. Ready. Emily whispered again. Dad, the live stream is showing every reaction now. My analysis confirmed the timing was perfect. I pressed the hidden mechanism in the briefcase. A projector activated on the pavilion wall. Graphs, charts, and financial documents appeared clearly. Richard and Victoria froze. Cameras captured the moment. Guests leaned forward, murmuring. I could see the reflection of astonishment on their faces. And then a notification appeared on the tablet. SEC filing received. Sterling Investments misreported $42 million in assets last quarter. I stepped into the private terrace, the evening air crisp at 65 degrees. The scent of rosemary and grilled vegetables wafted from the kitchen below. Glass panes reflected the soft orange glow of the setting sun. I remembered 2008, meeting with Mentor Caroline at the Boston law office. The faint smell of leather-bound files and inked paper filled the air. She had emphasized meticulous documentation and timing. That memory guided my attention now. The terrace had polished stone floors, the echo of quiet footsteps mingling with distant laughter. 42 guests clustered near the dance floor. 3 photographers adjusted angles, their lenses clicking softly. I held the briefcase tightly against my hip. My pulse remained measured. Emily whispered, Dad, they do not suspect a thing. I analyzed Richard and Victoria. Their gestures showed confidence and entitlement. I counted 22 champagne flutes filled with golden liquid, bubbles rising steadily. The string quartet played softly in the background. I ran internal simulations, timing, reactions, sequences. I recalled 2015, a conference with colleague Peter at the port. The smell of diesel and salt water filled the small office. He had taught me to notice minute discrepancies. That skill sharpened my observation now. I positioned myself behind a column, near a side exit. The warm breeze carried faint jasmine scent, contrasting the cooling air. Richard raised his glass, speaking into a phone headset, unaware I could overhear. We kept him believing everything. 52,000 transferred last week alone, he said. Harold Mitchell will never see it coming. The control is ours. 3 months planning worked perfectly. Victoria laughed softly. All $3 billion are in our accounts now. He never questioned a cent. Make sure to cover the $42 million discrepancy, Richard added. No one must suspect yet. I observed their arrogance. Every word confirmed prior suspicions. Their overconfidence became tangible, visible in posture, tone, and gestures. I recalled 2011, walking with friend Marcus through the warehouse docks. The smell of salt water and engine oil lingered. He had taught me to anticipate moves, read timing, and hidden motives. That memory guided my strategy. I ran through sequences in my mind. The terrace tiles were cool, slightly damp from the afternoon mist. Guests murmured, unaware of the unfolding financial exposure. I adjusted the briefcase, ready for the final move. Every photographer, every guest, every subtle shift accounted for. The string quartet paused briefly, as if marking the moment. I considered the timings. 3 photographers, for staff, 22 flutes, each detail synchronized. I focused on the tablet. Confirmation showed all transfers active, $3,212,012,000 fully cleared. My mind traced the in-laws' projected reactions. Their micro-expressions and overconfidence ensured maximum impact. I pressed the mechanism on the briefcase. A soft click echoed, unnoticed. Hidden projections activated on the terrace wall. Charts, numbers, account summaries flashed vividly. Richard and Victoria froze mid-gesture. Did you see that? Richard exclaimed into his headset. We must move quickly. They cannot trace $42 million missing funds, he said. He has no idea Harold is already secured. The rest will follow next month, Victoria replied. Make sure the $3 billion plus $12,000 is protected in offshore accounts, Richard added. Nothing can go wrong now. Their voices carried clarity and arrogance. I observed each shift in posture, noting confusion creeping into their gestures. The sunlight faded, replaced by ambient lighting casting long shadows. I ran one final internal check. Sequences, distances, angles. Everything aligned perfectly. Each projection highlighted their miscalculations. The guests remained oblivious to the true scale. Emily glanced at me, eyes wide, whispering, Dad, it is time. I nodded subtly, calculated. My hand hovered over the briefcase release. My focus narrowed, deliberate, calm. The terrace's edges, polished stone, reflected light precisely where I needed. Every detail, sound, scent analyzed. And then I took a decisive step forward, pressing the release button fully. The briefcase opened completely, triggering the projections across the terrace, every chart, every balance, every $3 billion displayed in full view. I moved into the glass-walled conference lounge at 4:12 p.m. The air conditioning hummed softly. The room smelled like citrus cleaner and polished wood. Light from the west windows cut sharp lines across the long table. I remembered 2017, a meeting with my colleague Olivia Grant in Chicago. The room smelled like lemon polish and warm coffee. She had taught me to keep my voice level when numbers explode. That lesson sat with me now. I set the briefcase on the table. The latch clicked once. Emily closed the door behind us. Dad, they are coming in here, she said quietly. I nodded. I could hear heels on marble outside. Richard pushed the door open. Victoria followed, jaw tight. Harold stepped in last, calm, adjusting his tie. I took a seat at the head. The leather chair felt cool. The hum of the vents stayed steady. I looked at the wall display. The figures remained fixed. $3,212,012,000 across 3 accounts. 2 offshore entities listed. 1 domestic trust. I kept my hands flat on the table. I watched Richard's eyes track the numbers. He swallowed once. What is this supposed to be, he said. His voice tried to stay even. It did. Not. Victoria crossed her arms. You are projecting nonsense. This is a wedding, she said. Emily stood beside me. It is not nonsense, she said. It is verified. I tapped the screen once. The chart expanded. These are your transfers. $52,000 last week. $42 million misreported last quarter, I said. I kept my tone measured. Richard leaned forward. You cannot prove that, he said. He pointed at the figures. His finger trembled. Harold pulled out a chair and sat. He folded his hands. You have known me 15 years, he said quietly. You never asked what I built. Victoria laughed once. It sounded thin. We asked. You said nothing, she said. I met her eyes. You did not ask. You assumed, I said. I could hear the faint clink of glasses outside. The room felt cooler now. I ran through the sequence in my head. Evidence, then leverage, then consequence. I needed them to speak. I needed them to commit. I slid a folder across the table. The paper smelled faintly of ink. Signatures. Dates. Routing numbers. 3 institutions, I said. Richard flipped pages. Fast. Then slower. This is fabricated, he said. No one moves $3 billion like this. Emily stepped forward. It was staged over 6 months, she said. 3 tranches. 12 accounts. I watched Victoria's posture change. Her shoulders dropped an inch. You are trying to scare us, she said. I shook my head once. No. I am documenting, I said. I felt my pulse stay steady. This was the turn. I needed clarity. I needed control. What do you want? Richard said. His voice sharpened. Control. I let a second pass. Truth, I said. He laughed. Short. You think you have it, he said. Harold looked at him. Calm. You lost $120,000 in 2022, Harold said. You tried to replace status with noise. Victoria's eyes flicked to Richard. Do not bring that up, she said. I noted the shift. This was the pressure point. I leaned forward slightly. You wanted control over the estate. Not just money, I said. You wanted the narrative. Richard's jaw set. Everyone wants control, he said. You had it for 40 years. I remembered Olivia's voice again. Keep it level. Let the numbers do the work. I tapped the screen. The timeline appeared. January 2023. Engagement party. First incident, I said. You tested the boundary. Emily added, we saw it. Victoria stepped closer. To the table. So what now, she said. Her voice was lower. I considered the room. The temperature. The light. The distance to the door. 10 feet. One guard outside. 2 cameras in the corner. I needed to finalize the move. I needed it to be irreversible. I pressed a second icon. The documents locked on the display. I have already filed notices with 3 institutions, I said. Your accounts are under review. Richard shook his head. You cannot do that without proof, he said. I held his gaze. I have it, I said. Silence settled for a moment. The hum of the vents filled the space. I felt the situation resolve into a single line. They were not just arrogant. They were desperate. That changed everything. Emily looked at me. Dad, she said. I stood. Slow. Deliberate. I closed the briefcase halfway. Not fully. I wanted them to see the edge. I wanted them to feel the boundary. I realized then the real shift. They had built their confidence on silence, not on facts. And now the silence was gone. Richard exhaled. Say what you came to say, he said. His voice was tight. I nodded once. Before I spoke, the door opened again. A man in a dark suit stepped in, holding a tablet. He looked at Richard first, then at me. He cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, he said, voice crisp. Your bank just froze 2 accounts totaling $42 million. I followed Richard and Victoria into the ballroom at 5:02 p.m. The air smelled of vanilla frosting and polished wood. Crystal chandeliers reflected amber light across the marble floor. I remembered 2014, sitting with my colleague Olivia in the Chicago office. The faint scent of espresso and paper filled the small room. She had emphasized precision and timing when decisions mattered most. That lesson guided my attention now. The tables were set for 50 guests, each with a folded napkin and gold-rimmed plate. 3 photographers adjusted lenses, focusing on in-laws. The hum of conversation mixed with soft music from the corner quartet. Richard stepped toward the podium. This is ridiculous, he said. You cannot prove a thing. Victoria added, we have managed everything perfectly. $3 billion, $12,000 in small transfers. Nobody will know. Emily whispered, Dad, now. I nodded. Harold adjusted his cufflinks, silver catching the light. I pressed a button on the tablet. Charts expanded across screens. I tracked every transfer, every discrepancy. $42 million misreported, 3 months in preparation, I said calmly. Richard staggered back slightly. This is impossible, he said. We controlled every document. Victoria shouted, stop it. You have no proof. I shook my head. All proof is documented. 3 institutions involved, 5 accounts fully reconciled. Richard slammed the podium. You cannot do this, he yelled. Victoria turned to him. The filings are sealed. They cannot be reversed. I watched the fear creep into their expressions. I noted 25 glasses of champagne. I counted each step they took, the distance from the nearest exits. The lighting highlighted every micro-expression. The room temperature felt warm, 68 degrees, contrasting with the cool marble. I calculated every angle, every pathway. My mind traced the sequence, ensuring maximum impact. I recalled 2011, working with Mentor Marcus at the port. The smell of salt water and diesel engines lingered. He had shown me to anticipate outcomes and observe reactions. That skill now ensured the plan's success. I scanned guests, noting astonishment and whispers. Every in-law gesture indicated panic. I adjusted the briefcase slightly, ensuring readiness. What do we do now? Richard said, voice wavering. Everything is wrong. Victoria added, her hands trembling. You cannot undo this, I said. I tapped a second icon on the tablet. All projections locked in place. $3 billion, $12,000, $42 million highlighted clearly. Emily observed, calm. It is irreversible, she said. I analyzed the room one last time. Every guest, every camera, every exit noted. The sound of cutlery and glasses clinking echoed slightly. The smell of roasted meats and candles filled the air. I focused, calculating steps to finalize control. My mind reviewed sequences and timing. The velvet curtains shifted slightly in the breeze. Shadows lengthened. I understood fully how their perception had changed. I took a deliberate breath. My hand moved to the lever. I pulled it fully. The briefcase projected the entire portfolio across every screen. Every document, every number displayed, all irreversible. The guests gasped. Richard's mouth opened. Words failed. Victoria's hands shook. Harold leaned back, calm. And I realized the entire narrative had flipped in that single act. The balance of power had shifted completely. My pulse remained steady as I released the final lock, ensuring nothing could undo it. I stepped onto the rooftop terrace at 6:15 p.m. The cool evening air carried the faint scent of jasmine and city traffic below. I remembered 2018, discussing contract discrepancies with colleague Peter at the Chicago office. The smell of printer ink and brewed coffee filled the room. He had taught me to read the micro-expressions of everyone involved. That memory guided my observation now. The terrace had glass railings, reflecting the amber glow of the setting sun. Soft music from below floated up in waves. I counted 36 guests milling about, 4 cameras capturing angles, and 5 staff moving quietly. Richard paced near the edge. Victoria followed, whispering instructions. "They will never see this coming," she said. I held my briefcase tightly. My pulse remained steady. The orange sky cast long shadows across the terrace. I calculated the sequences, timing, and angles. The cool breeze shifted, carrying the smell of jasmine and faintly roasted almonds from the buffet. I watched the in-laws' gestures. Each micro-expression revealed stress, confusion, and overconfidence fading. I noted 20 champagne glasses filled precisely, bubbles rising slowly. Emily whispered, "Dad, it is all visible now." I nodded. The tablets displayed final transfers. $3,212,012,000 confirmed. 3 offshore accounts. $12,000 flagged. I recalled 2016, consulting with mentor Caroline in Boston. The smell of polished wood and inked papers lingered. She had taught me patience under observation. That memory reinforced my calculations. I focused on the guests. Their reactions were unfolding as expected. Richard raised his glass. "I do not understand." "How did this happen?" he said. Victoria crossed her arms. "We prepared everything." "This cannot be right," she said. "You had no idea Harold could act," I said. Emily added, "Every document, every account verified." The room hummed with whispers. The light reflected off crystal chandeliers. I considered distances, angles, and exit points. The music shifted to a soft piano solo. I noted the shifting shadows on marble tiles. The briefcase rested on the table, opened, projecting every document and chart. Every figure displayed, irreversible. I watched Richard's face pale. Victoria's hand trembled. I reflected. Their control was built on silence, assumptions, and arrogance. Every miscalculation now exposed. Every transfer, verified, unchangeable. I ran through contingencies. Each guest observed, their expressions mirroring astonishment. I realized how completely the narrative had shifted. Their prior power was gone. Their strategy dismantled. The room's temperature felt cooler, 66 degrees, air from vents carrying faint citrus from cleaning solution. I shifted slightly, ensuring every projection was visible. I noted 32 additional guests entering late. Each brought new energy, their faces registering shock. 3 photographers captured the entire sequence, angles unobstructed. I observed every subtle tremor, every inhalation. And then I understood fully. The perception of control Richard and Victoria held for 15 years had vanished completely. I felt the balance shift in real time. The narrative they had relied on for authority, money, and legacy no longer existed. I realized the entire estate, their power, and the truth were now seen by everyone. I inhaled deeply, steady, and let the full weight of the reversal register. Every micro-expression, every whispered reaction confirmed it. The world as they had built it for themselves was gone, and I knew without a doubt that nothing would ever be the same again. I walked onto the rooftop garden at 7:30 p.m. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. The scent of lilacs mingled with fresh-cut grass. I remembered 2012, consulting with my colleague Olivia in Chicago. The smell of printer ink and warm coffee filled the small office. She had emphasized meticulous attention to detail and patience. That memory sharpened my focus now. The garden had stone pathways, the sound of water trickling from a fountain nearby. 35 guests lingered along the railings. For photographers, captured angles. 5 waitstaff moved quietly with trays. I held the briefcase lightly against my leg. The wind carried a faint jasmine fragrance. I observed Richard Sterling pacing near the edge. Victoria whispered, "They cannot interfere now." I watched every gesture. Their posture indicated uncertainty. "We should act fast," Richard said. "The 3 accounts, the missing $42 million, must remain hidden," Victoria replied. "I cannot believe this exposure," he said. "Harold Mitchell is 78 years old and unstoppable," she added. "Every step we took, over 15 years, is compromised," Richard said. I reflected silently. Timing, reactions, sequence, control. I glanced at the tablet. Transfers confirmed. $3,212,012,000 across 3 entities. $12,000 flagged for review. Every element locked. I scanned guests, noting astonishment and whispered speculation. Emily whispered softly, "Dad, it is all complete." I observed shadows lengthening across the stone floor. The fountain splashed rhythmically. Sunlight faded, replaced by lantern light. I considered the narratives they had built on assumption. Their overconfidence had blinded them. Each document, each account, every detail now immutable. I felt the significance of the moment. Every calculation validated. Each in-law's expectation upended. I realized the estate, their control, and the truth had shifted completely. The world they had known collapsed in an instant. I inhaled deeply. The breeze carried faint almond and rose aromas. I reflected on the lessons learned. Strategy, timing, observation. Every micro-expression and reaction documented. I noted the precise distance between the podium and the terrace edge, 22 feet. For cameras focused on Richard and Victoria, I considered exit points, angles, contingencies. The string quartet played softly, notes carrying in the cool evening air. Shadows stretched across marble and stone. I calculated outcomes. Each guest reaction predicted. The balance of authority had reversed. Confidence replaced with shock. Their previous control evaporated. I understood the permanence of this act. And then I turned to Emily, who nodded once. I exhaled slowly. My eyes scanned the garden. The sun nearly set, temperature falling to 64 degrees. I pressed the final tab on the tablet. The briefcase closed gently. The projections disappeared from the terrace screens. Every figure, every account, every transfer finalized and locked. I turned to Richard. "You have had 15 years to assume control. None of it matters anymore," I said. Harold smiled faintly. I inhaled, letting the evening air settle. I reflected on patience, observation, and timing. The balance of power does not remain static. Arrogance often blinds. Truth ultimately prevails.